Welcome to our Veritas lecture. This will be our final one for this school year, if you will. We'll resume again in September. Also, just a reminder, we do have a prayer at close of day at 7:30, so you're welcome to stay for that as well. We're pleased again to have Professor Mark Paustian, Watertown, Wisconsin man for many years. Then he served a mission church in Rockford, Illinois. So as he served in that church, and they were blessed to see some growth, they were blessed to purchase land, they were blessed to build a facility, and then the Lord gave him a call to Martin Luther College. And you've been there since 2000, around that?
25 years.
25 years.
More.
So I've known the young man for a while, and happy that he's here with us. We'll turn the floor over to you. In about 7:23, I'll give you a little signal.
And what will that signal mean?
Hurry up, you're done.
Like stop on a dime? Or
You get 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can't wait.
God bless.
Oh, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. 3 years running. The topic this year is a little bit more difficult than the last 2 that I had. Difficult conversations. I heard about 3 years ago about some Pew research. It was about pastors, that the number one thing that surprised them in the ministry and that they found themselves not prepared for was interpersonal conflict. And so I kind of thought, I'm going to try to take this on and study it. And so thank you for letting me kind of continue to work out what I want to say about interpersonal conflict. It's a heavier topic. Let's start with maybe a story that isn't too heavy. So my wife and I sat down to watch The Passion of the Christ. Know that movie? Mel Gibson thing? Okay, and I'd seen it before in a theater. She had not seen it. And so we get to the scourging scene. And she said, if it gets rough, I'll just kind of turn away. And I've seen the scene. And it's brutal. It goes on and on and on. So I'm thinking this sweet-scented woman's not going to want to see that happen. But it came out wrong. It came out, we might as well not watch it. That's how it came out. Yeah, bumpy ride. So here's the calm professor telling her not to feel that way, you should feel this way. This is not what I meant. And after a certain amount of time, maybe we've all seen this movie, been there, she just kind of said, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And so we didn't. And you know how this goes. Kind of cold for a while, and then someone tells a joke that signals we're better, and that's what you do. It was at least 7 years later that we're at the supper table, and my Abby's here, and Hannah's there, and Connie's across the way. And one of the children innocently brought up the name of the movie, The Passion of the Christ. And something made me say across the table, you know what? I don't know if I ever said I was sorry about that. Do you think she knew what I was talking about? Yeah, she did. You don't know her, but this big, beautiful Connie Paustian smile, but with tears in her eyes. But with a big, beautiful smile, she says, I forgive you. And I get tears in my eyes, and the kids are like, would you please just get a room, Like, make it stop. But you didn't think that there was some moment that was still waiting to happen. You didn't think that there was that thing. It's a very, very special thing we have in the forgiveness of sins. Where do I turn to advance the slide? Oh, there you are. Okay, yeah. So in the world of research and conflict, I just have to think that we have every advantage. So the first thing we want to do today is just draw the topic fully into the uniquely Christian frame where it belongs, because we have every advantage. And the advantage begins, I think, in that we know how to be suspicious of ourselves. So suspicious of myself means I can catch myself casting myself in the best possible light, and it can catch myself ascribing the worst possible motives to this person. But we have the ability to shed that nonsense as the Spirit again gives us the gift of repentance. This is every advantage. And we have the advantage, if you could advance the slide, this really, really powerful thing. So secular research has the word forgiveness. It does not have the death of God behind it. It's not even the same idea. Not really. And so this slide makes me think of a pretty dramatic experience. It's not a hard question. But I put this slide up. I had a Bible class at my church in New Ulm. There were like 100 people in the fellowship hall, and they told me they're not going to talk. They're not going to talk. Okay, so I put up this slide. It was going to be a 5-minute little icebreaker, and not that hard of a question. And then the 5 minutes became 10, the 10 became 20. In my head, I got this whole big agenda, and I'm trying to think, what will I do if I have 30 minutes left? What will I do if I have 15 minutes left? It took the whole hour. And it was a hard conversation and really, really hard questions. I walked away thinking to myself, whew, God's people have stories of hurting and being hurt. They have stories and unresolved, difficult questions. So the question itself, not that difficult. You hurt me, it's like now you're in my debt. To forgive you is to release you. This is the Greek word, release you from the debt, to cancel the debt. To forgive is to zip down the judge's robe and hang it up. It's not mine to wear. Get out of the judge's seat. Get out of the judge's seat. Forgiveness is to give up the right to hurt you for hurting me. So it's not, I'm over it. It's not that big a deal. It's none of that. I give up the right to hurt you for hurting me, and I offer you my goodwill instead. And we'll speak about where this comes from. In fact, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Where it comes from. The power. So we will get to some really interesting strategies. I promise we'll get there. But first, what a remarkable verse this is. So where 2 or 3 come together, in my name means in view of everything we know about Jesus. So in my name, 2 or 3 come together, there am I, he says. There am I. What's so interesting is if you once put this verse into its context. So next slide, please. Maybe again and again. So if your brother sins against you, Jesus says, here's what you're going to do, and here's the steps. And the question, how many times shall I forgive my brother? Peter says, how about 7, thinking he's being magnanimous. Rabbis said 3. Jesus said 70 times 7. There's no limit to this. You're just getting warmed up at 70 times 7. And then you get the story of the man who leaves the presence of the king, having had this enormous, impossible debt just canceled, walks out of the presence of the king and meets a man who owes him a little paltry thing in comparison and does not have the heart to do the same, and it gets back to the master. And this is kind of a hard story because it gets back to the master. And the master is not at all amused by that. Not amused by it. And so what's so interesting to think about, so next slide, back to that. It makes you think that there are 2 or 3 coming together. They're not coming together for a coffee or something. They're not coming together for a play date or whatever. The context suggests that something ugly and human came between the 2 or 3. And so for Jesus to say, now when 2 or 3 come together, that's me. That's me. Now you know. Now you know something about me you couldn't otherwise know. So it makes you think about the sin that is all around us, that pretty much any sin you think of, you can think of it as having the shape of a wedge. So every sin you think of has this power to just fracture relationship. The great hymn verse says, having lost our God, we lost our brother too. The fracturing of relationship. So lust makes a person an object, and pride makes them my competition, and selfishness walls us each off in our own private worlds of concern, and gossip tears families apart and churches apart, and right down the line you go. The power of sin to fracture relationship. And so for Jesus to say, where two or three come together. And maybe you think when it seemed impossible, just seemed intractable problems, never going to happen. Where two or three come together. This is where we find our deeply rooted optimism that we can bring to the topic of conflict. Where two or three come together. So my quick story is we're in a Bible study at someone's home, and Ed says, Pastor, we got to tell you what happened. It was, again, another story that goes back 5-6 years. Got to tell you what happened. Ed said, I came to church and I had said to myself, this is the last time. I'm sick of it. And I was sick of you, Pastor. I was tired of being angry. I just had enough, and I came for the last time. And Tony chimes in and says, and something, I don't know, I knew that Ed was distressed. I knew I was part of it. And she crosses the narthex, and she doesn't remember what she said exactly, but that she poured out her sorrow at Ed. I know you're hurting. I know you're angry. I know I'm part of that. And she said, I just hope you can forgive me. And you're telling this story like with the hair in the arm going up, like, what happened? Ed says, Pastor, the anger of all those years just left. And every good feeling I ever had for this church, for you, it came back, and it's never left me. And they're looking at me like, what in the world was that? I don't even know what I said. In hindsight, no, I'd say, well, where two or three come together, there am I. That's me. Now you know. So, forgiveness, next slide. This is just a cue for me. I love this picture. My uncle with the best name ever was Harvey Noodleman. He had a dairy farm. And there's an electrified fence around the cow pasture, and you're 7 years old, and you got to know. You just got to know. Is it really, and I might be making up the memory. I'm still here. So, but in my memory, you touch the wire, and your hand closes around it. And if that really happened, it was an intermittent pulse, and I'm okay. But just think about the picture. I'm holding on to something that's killing me. It's killing every pleasant thing about me. But I don't have the power to release. I don't have the power to let it go. Killing every pleasant thing about me. But I'm holding on, right? I suppose you could very easily complete the picture, Christ, the Son of God, grabbing, experiencing the full surging wrath of God for us. That would be our release. So the way I think about this, you've thought about it too, is if you really hurt me, really hurt me, my sinful nature might react first. But the way it's going to work is that if my own forgiveness is a simple matter, easily dispensed with, because, my forgiveness, come on. If that's how I think of it, simple matter really, then the first time someone hurts me, really hurts me, I will lack the power to let go. But if my own forgiveness is this huge mountain of debt, and I see it canceled at such a cost, and I see the very gates of hell closed to me forever, then in that, though my sinful nature might react badly at first, in that I will find the power. I will find the power that I get to walk this planet in the freedom and lightness of this no one whose debt I hold. There's just no one whose debt I hold. It's a remarkable thing. And so, next, this isn't just pastors. Any of us can maybe think about times where somebody in the church family, somebody really hurt them. And the first time somebody really hurts them, they're just going to leave. And you find yourself sometimes almost begging them, if you leave now, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss what this whole thing has been about from the start. It's always been about this. It's always been about this. Forgiveness. And you're going to miss it. 2 or 3 come together, there am I, and you're going to miss it. Now is when theology becomes real and it becomes life. And, it's a supernatural thing to release. So you win some, you lose some as far as thinking about those hard conversations. There's a book, in the back of my handout has 3 recommended books. 2 of them are secular. The one I really recommend, it's called Unoffendable. It's kind of making the rounds. It's an easy read, kind of it's written in a light manner. But this is why I recommend it. For a long time I've thought, of course, Ephesians 4 says, in your anger do not sin, and so that means we're not going to really push back on the anger part. Just don't let the anger make you do, hurtful things. Do the opposite of what it's making you want to do, act of kindness. And so I've long thought, well, in your anger, that's not the problem. Do not sin, but I don't think I thought enough about how that goes on, that later in Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul says, get rid of it. He says, get rid of it. Get rid of all anger, get rid of all bitterness, get rid of it. And I just wonder if Christian people really understand that. Something goes on that distresses us in the church, and we can just take on a posture of, now I've got a right to hold on to this because you wronged me, and now I've got a right to it, and not thinking nearly enough. Get rid of it. You think, this person, what they've done, have I really not done way worse than that? Really? Now, being suspicious of ourselves, it makes us think about something called righteous indignation, righteous anger, which is a thing. It's just being suspicious of myself. I think I need to kind of wonder if that's really what's happening most of the time. The truth is I get very, very self-righteous. And the truth is the Pharisee just wakes up inside of me. And it's righteous indignation. I don't know. I think we're capable of that. One of the hard questions of that Bible study I mentioned was a lady asked about this little girl who had burns down both of her legs from her birth mom. And so I think I said, if there's ever a time, righteous indignation, this is the time. So it's a possible thing, but how suspicious I need to be that I'm just simply being self-righteous. And the Pharisee wakes up. And even if it were justified, it still is going to be that I'll respond better and more wisely if I get rid of the personal anger that's part of that. And so I think it's just a wonderful book to think about. It says, when you're in traffic, call it anger practice. Has this person really done worse than I've ever done? Not at all. Don't you get mad at your kids? Well, where do they get it from? When they're little sinners. And I'm still going to be better and wiser if I get rid of it. And so maybe the most important thing is just to give up. If we can just start by giving up the posture, I get to hold on to it. That would be a good thing. So, next slide. Okay. We're sliding toward the strategies and things that I think are really interesting. So here we go. We're not doing everything we could do today. We don't have time to talk about how to communicate in controversy. That would be a great topic. We'll just keep it interpersonal. So our definition is a difficult conversation is any conversation you don't want to have. Go ahead and advance the slide. So the ones you're avoiding count. And here's a really powerful question. The question why I don't want to have that conversation is really pretty significant. You can think of a lot of reasons why you might not want to have the conversation. There's one that rises to the top for me. Next slide. Go ahead, next slide. I think it's this. The hardest conflict, the most emotional, I think it can often be about a fragile ego that needs constant protecting, a fragile sense of self. So if you think of somebody, no names, but think of someone who has a lot of drama, just a lot of drama. Could this be what's going on? A fragile sense of self, a fragile ego that needs protecting. Next slide. So it is the fact that the conflict wants to say something about me. Next slide. We have stumbled into, you and I, in our conflict, we've stumbled into a vulnerability. We stumbled into an insecurity of one of us or both of us. Next. A way to get at that, why don't I want to have this conversation? A way to get at that would be, I don't like to see myself as someone who, and that's whatever may come up in the course of the conflict. I don't like to see myself as a husband that is just inconsiderate to his wife. I don't want to see myself as a pastor that ignores real problems. I don't want to see myself that way. And the hardest conflict is just poking a hot stick into that area of vulnerability, a fragile, fragile sense of self that I have to protect. I call it the hardest conversation in conflict. I call it the mom always loved you best conversation, which is we have all these other strategies until we get down to that. If that's what's going on, this something to the core of a person's identity that's so wounded and fragile and insecure, we're not going to make any progress until we get to that. So try that on for size, if it makes sense to you. Next. If we were in a class, we would have exchanged stories with each other. Then we'd use those stories the rest of the time just to kind of process the information. We won't do that now, but maybe you could already just to yourself be thinking about a recent conflict, a difficult one that was very emotional, one that was very confusing, one that went on for a while. And just explore it in your mind. What were the vulnerabilities that we stumbled into? What were the ways you might answer the question, I don't like to see myself as what is that thing? If you advance the slide. So if there's a fragile ego, why don't you go again? Yeah. If that's what's going on, what happens to people? I think it's this, that they get locked in. Like, my story is the story. There is no other story. My motives are pure and pristine. Your intentions were the worst, and get locked into. And they're not able to set themselves aside and even temporarily set their point of view aside just to adopt the point of view of another person. They're not able to do that. That takes time. My example for my students, your mom put 18 years into you, and then you go off to college and you never call her. And on some level, you know that probably does kind of hurt. On some level, you know that. But it really takes some lingering. It takes some deep thinking. Like, what is that like? And to be able to adopt that point of view and be inside of it, and what is it like in here? That takes real time. And it takes real humility. If I'm locked in because, I'm all fragile, I can't do that. And I can't do the deep listening the conflict requires. I can't do the deep listening, the deep hearing. And so if any of this is true, I'm pretty sure it is, next slide, then this is a really, to me, a powerful thing to think about. So my sinful nature goes first, and I'm not proud of it. But what I can get to, this other place where I'm not fragile. There's nothing going to come out in this conflict that's going to surprise me. I know who I am. I know what I am as a sinful person. But on the far bigger picture, I'm not fragile. My whole sense of self is not riding in the balance right now. I don't have anything really at stake. And I can get to that place in Christ, in the resiliency of Christian identity. I know who I am. I know who I am. And nothing is to make conflict easy, but what this does, as we talk about some strategies now, what makes those possible? What makes those available to me with a kind of self-control that they imply and so on? But I think this is where it is. I think probably last time I was here or 2 times ago, I talked about pursuing Christ in the morning and, pursuing Christ, pursuing that groundedness. Nothing makes this easy, but I think that's what makes these things possible. So let's talk about something practical. Next slide. So difficult conversations have a built-in challenge, and the challenge is, let's put all of those up. There it is. So I got all these great principles of conflict strategies, but then in the midst of it, the amygdala fires up, and the blood leaves my brain, goes into my limbs, right? And prefrontal cortex checks out, and so all those great strategies are gone. They're just not available in the thick of it. And so what are you going to do about that? Here's something that I learned 3 years ago, and I'm honestly going to say this is a change I found I could immediately make. And for me, it's been very, very helpful. And so it's not everything we could possibly say about conflict, but it's a really good place to start, I think. So here we go. The big idea, here it is. Next. So I'm bringing together 2 scholarly books in a kind of a synthesis, doing the best I can. And so here's my attempt. Just so you know, this isn't all mine. What we want, one writer talks about, is a free flow into the pool of meaning. So the metaphor is you and I are standing in a pool of meaning, and things are pouring in. We're pouring out freely and openly our perspectives and our feelings and our opinions. It's all going into the pool of meaning. It's all just wonderful. That's what you want. And one of the writers puts it this way, kind of somewhat clever. We want to be able to notice whenever there's silence or violence, either one, in either one of us or both. So silence just means, obviously, it's getting loud in here. I can't believe she said that right now. But I'm getting really, really cold and silent. That's how I lean. It's not great. But silence or violence is a way to talk about it's getting loud out here. Loud in here, loud out here. We're raising our voice, we're venting. And there the picture is like taking a fire hose and shooting it into a wading pool. I mean, you're saying lots of stuff, but nothing's getting in terms of just being deeply heard and understood. And so silence or violence, one of us or both, it's happening. If I could just learn one sentence, I've tried it recently, it's a pretty good sentence, which is, sweetheart, when you say that, I get frustrated. And that's a way to get it out of here. But anyway, silence or violence, we sense them happening, we detect that moment. What do we do? What we do is that we will pull back from whatever the issue is. We're not pulling back from the person, we're pulling back whatever is the issue of contention. And then 2 things. We're going to make it safe. If we can, we're going to make it safe. When it's safe, when I feel it's as safe as it can be, then I can re-engage with the issue between us, but now this time with way more curiosity. Way, way, way more curiosity. So that's the big idea. Silence or violence, pull back, make it safe, and then when I'm ready, re-engage with way more curiosity. So let's unpack some of this. 2 big ideas then. Safety, going hard on issues, soft on people. Curiosity, to no longer assume I know. 2 big ideas. Next slide. Biblical warrant is easy to lay. Does this sound this is being really soft, isn't it? This kind of, how gentle should we be? Well, completely humble and gentle with each other. I talked to my boys at college about the qualifications for ministry that Paul says there's 3 or 4 different ways. Not violent, not quarrelsome, can't love to argue, all these. And so you have to be capable. I tell the guys, you have to be capable of gentleness. We had a pastor years ago. We said, you're going to be a wonderful pastor. You just can't play church league softball. You got to sign a piece of paper or something. You just can't, because until you have better self-control, you can just, in 5 minutes, what you could do. So completely gentle, and then Let each one look not to his own interest, but to the interests of others. And so that applies to all communication in Christ, that I look into the things that are your things, your concerns, your interests, your problems, your struggle. Well, how much more in the throes of a conflict? Is this a really, really important principle? So curiosity, safety, there it is. Okay. When do we need to do this? And maybe just to briefly make the point that it's wonderful to get animated and talk about things we're excited about and walk away as friends. That's not what this is all about. That's wonderful to be able to do that. It's that we're sensing that things have become personal. We're sensing that maybe some harm can be done. We're sensing the need to separate the person from the issue. And we're sensing the need, one more, to get back on the same side. So once again, if I'm fragile ego and get locked in, this is another thing I just can't do, to get on the same side with you. Like, what's it about for you? What's this all about? And you tell me, and I can say, well, if it matters to you, it matters to me. We're on the same side, metaphorically holding hands. But if we're not, if we sense these things happening, that's what these strategies are for. Next slide. How to make it safe. So you don't got to remember, no, let's do one at a time. We don't got to remember all of these. It's that the question itself is so worthwhile. How do I make it safe? We can give a whole number of ways we can think about this, but it's the question itself. I'm teaching Hebrew right now, or in the Proverbs. We're just finishing a unit, and it's all over the Proverbs. A gentle answer turns away wrath. The fool stirs stuff up, loves it. The gentle answer, Hebrew I think would be the soft answer. So it's classic de-escalation. So you're up here, I'm down here. How long can you stay up there at the fever pitch of emotion if I'm down here? And so what do? Number one, soften. Maybe it's not the time and place. Let's talk, Jim, but not like this. Not like this. So time and place. Now, the reason I know this works, quote unquote, so I had a student, and as a senior at college, we were really good friends. But as a junior, it was rough. He was in a class where they learned to write devotions in preaching, and this young man had a lot at stake. Oh my goodness, he had a lot at stake. Am I going to be good at this? What if I'm terrible? All that's going on for him, right? He would pout, he would yell at me, he would walk away from me. This doesn't happen to me usually, but this is what and I, like a fool, would try to still get meanings into the pool. But Joe, not his name, Joe, but this, Joe, but that. And I'm trying to still get meanings into the pool. He's ridiculous. So all the things on this slide I can talk about apply to that situation. So we're going to get soft. Hey, can we take a step back here? Can we just take a step back? Don't do any of this insincerely. Don't do anything insincerely. But if I could genuinely say, I raised my voice to you, Joe, and you did not deserve that. Next. Acknowledge feelings are like children, so the picture is you're on the phone and a child is tugging at your leg. They have to be acknowledged. They're like kids, they have to be acknowledged. So I can see how I've frustrated you. I'm frustrated too. So acknowledging the feelings that are present is just on the list. Next. Signal respect is like air. That is to say, if it's not there, nothing else matters. Truly. And so I could sincerely say to this particular student, no one has ever worked harder on this devotion than you. No one. And I can signal the beauty of that effort. Next. Again, it goes to the deep listening. People have to feel heard. They just have to feel heard. So, Joe, I know your date for chapel is coming up. Now it's a week away, and the pressure is building, and you're really, really worried. And so he has to feel like I've listened to him. I won't tell the whole story, but with my darling bride, there was something she was saying about every 2 weeks. She would say this thing. It was about an Airbnb I had booked. She would say this thing, and it would get loud in here. What is she saying? Does she think I'm selfish? What is she saying? And so she said this like 10 times over the course of a few months. And finally, communication guy, it finally dawns on me, I'd never given her a single reason ever to think I hurt her. Not once. So finally, one day, it just occurs to me, and he said, you're really worried about this Airbnb, and we're going to have a bad time, and it just really, it bothers you. And then she is like, yes. So why is she repeating herself? Because I never heard her yet. So that's why she's repeating herself. People have to know that we hear them. This is a major, major principle here. Let's keep going, though. Confirm the person. You're a fine writer, Joe. Honestly, you are. You're a fine writer. I'm not sure what we're doing here, but you're a fine writer. Next. Contrast. To say what I'm not saying. To say what I'm not saying, which is, if you think I'm saying you have to start over, I'm not saying that. Next, find the common purpose. So we're going to get on the same side. I promise you, I will do whatever it takes. We're going to get you into that pulpit with an incredibly satisfying experience. And so we're going to share a purpose. We're going to share a purpose right now. And then the last one, the third story. So the third story is, how would a neutral observer describe the conflict? How would a marriage counselor describe it? So describe it in such a way that both can say, yeah, that's it. And so a marriage counselor might say, you two have different needs for conversation. Okay, we can both say, yeah, that's exactly it. So Joe, it's clear to me that we are interpreting this devotion text in very different ways. We can both say yes to that. So that's the third story, that can be the bridge to the next big thing. But if we pause here, again, it's the powerful question of how to make it safe. Don't got to remember all of this, don't got to do this every time. But boy, how grounded you'd have to be in resiliency in Christ to even want to, or to be capable of this. And so let's, I'm watching the clock, let's continue. Make it safe. And then when I'm ready to take the issue up, again, the idea is I can do it now with far more curiosity, far, far more curiosity. And it'll be my job to sort of convince all of us that there's a whole lot we probably don't know that can be the source of our curiosity. So let's make our way toward why be curious. There are a number of predictable mistakes people make in conflict. I really think this is the big one. I think this is the most common mistake people make in conflicts. And that is to assume, third last line, we have a full understanding of the conflict and already know everything there is to know. Classic mistake. And so whenever I hear somebody complaining about this other person who's just being completely, irrational and unrealistic and just terrible, everything that I've studied makes me want to say, but aren't you a little bit curious? Or is this just this person that's just, aren't you a little bit curious? Because it's just a really, really easy assumption to make. So next slide. Why be curious? The middle said there's a role for message delivery. I may have to say something to you you're not going to want to hear. And I do talk to my students about how to do that. How do we deliver messages? But if we back off from that for a second here, message delivery, I know what's going on. I'm just going to go into that person's office and tell them. I'm going to deliver a message. And one of the books says, it's like there's no easy way, pleasant way to deliver a hand grenade. There just isn't a way to do it. You're a good friend, and we've known each other a long time, and you stink at your job. There isn't a way really to take the edge off that message. So I'm not saying there aren't times we don't deliver messages, but this is the paradox. I find this really helpful. As you sit in that dilemma, should I bring this up or not? If I bring it up, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be some fallout. It's going to be awkward for a while. If I don't bring it up, I'm going to be just still resenting and still just all this turmoil. And so next slide, here's the solution. I think it's just a wonderful thing to think about. That the less confident we are about whether we have the whole story, then the more confident we are to approach a brother or sister just to find out. the less confident I know what's going on, and I got this message ready to deliver, well, the more confident I am bringing it up in a very open-hearted way. I just feel like I don't have the whole story. I thought I did, and now I'm kind of thinking maybe I don't. And that's not a hard thing to do at all. Yeah? I'm not sure if I've really heard you. I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. So, it's easy. It's not that bad. Next slide. So what don't we know? Seek first to understand what. There's a communication principle. What could there be to learn in a true learning conversation, which is what we're talking about? Maybe I don't have the whole picture. Next slide. So I'm going to just inject this, see if it makes sense, and then we'll get to another slide of all the bubbles, what to be curious about. But just for a moment to think about, if we have a lot of strong emotion, like where is that really coming from? And to think about where it may be coming from, all our strong negative emotion, is that we have interpreted events, we think we know what it means, and out of that meaning comes all of our strong feeling. That work? So the boss gives the female subordinate all the hardest jobs, all the sensitive stuff, all the messy stuff. She gives all that stuff to him. And she, without even thinking I'm interpreting right now, she interprets it. And it just feels like the way it is when she says, he doesn't respect me. So it's an interpretation. Out of that interpretation, of course, comes a lot of anger and hurt feelings. And what's really going on is she's the only one the boss thinks I can really trust with the hard jobs. And so her strong feeling came from an interpretation. So if you go through the slides, I want to just kind of quickly give you the visual of this. So there's all the dots, and she has connected them in a certain way. Or you have, and you see a sailboat. Next. I connect them another way. I'm more spiritual, and I see a cross. Neither of us have used all the dots. We've both left some things out. We've both brought some things in. And the simplest strategy for this is to be able to say to someone, I'm very frustrated. Let me tell you how I got there. I saw this, and it seemed like this, like you don't respect me. Now you tell me. Now you tell me. And I want you to do the same thing. How do you connect the dots? What did it seem to mean? And isn't that where the strong feeling comes from? And so I hope that made some sense. Let's get to a whole bunch of bubbles. And so that's what I just said. Next one. Here's my path. I saw this, it meant this, and I'm frustrated. Now you. Okay, so here we go. What don't I know? What don't I know? All right. Let's talk about it. So in a conflict, what helps me to pull back from message delivery, what I don't know is the dots that I haven't seen. You are privy to other information that I have no idea about. So what I don't know is all these other dots that you're reacting to. Next. I don't know your story. So the degree to which two people's stories can both be true and yet very, very different. And it tends to be that the way I feel makes sense within the story that I'm telling myself. So my story could be what happened in the last 5 hours. Her story could be the last 5 years of not being appreciated. Two very, very different stories. And the way we feel makes sense within the story. The fact that she's hurt makes sense within that 5-year story of not being appreciated. So there was a guy, I always feel like if somebody's just making no sense to me at all, I just don't get it. Guy in my church, he wanted to quit the church. We had a building project, and about 40 feet in the air, maybe 35 feet in the air, these glulam beams come together with a square metal bracket, about 9 inches square. And Don wanted to paint those brackets. And someone said, well, you know, Don, we should really talk about that as a committee. And he quit the church over that. And so whenever you're feeling like this person is making no sense at all, how do you quit a church over putting paint on a bracket that's 9 by 9? But then, you know, you hear the story. And it does kind of make sense. The story is he put in 60 hours a week backbreaking work, laying the bricks on our church, highly skilled labor, but backbreaking work. And then at night he would clean the place up for the guys to come in the next day and do their thing. Saturday morning, a building committee member comes in and pushes a broom for an hour. Well, Don is putting in 60 hours a week on this place. And by the way, construction is his life, right? This is his life. This is what he knows. And they should be painted. And he says to a building committee person, hey, I'm going to paint those. Well, Don, we as a committee want to be able to talk about the aesthetics. And so it's precisely because of just how trivial it was. That was kind of the point, just how small. And so the way a person feels may very well make sense within a story, and it might be a story that we just don't happen to know. So next. The unsaid. What do I not know? I don't know the thing you've not been able to say to me. It's a personal example. If I ever did not look at my bride, well, that's what her dad did. It took a lot of years to say that. When you don't look at me, you know what that does? It took a lot of years to say this. And so what I don't know is a thing that you weren't able to say to me. The unsaid thing. Next. I don't know your intentions. So the reality is we have more than one. We have good ones and bad ones all mixed up inside of us. I maybe can guess at one of yours, maybe two. But I don't actually know your intentions. The thing about intentions is that we actually do care a lot about them. So you cut me off in traffic, it's because you think I'm not a good driver, or you cut me off in traffic because you're on the way to the hospital. How I read your intentions matters profoundly in how I take you. And the problem is we just don't know these things. We think we do, but we don't. So there's intentions on the list of what I just might not know. Next. Your feelings. We're feeling more than one thing at once, and it's complicated. We're feeling more than one thing at once, and it's complicated. I can maybe guess you're angry, but there's way more than that going on that I have no idea. And think about the fact that you can have a conflict that's really entirely about the feeling. It's not really about anything else at all. It's only about the feeling, and it's the last thing you would say. The last thing anybody talks about or mentions, but that's all it is. Father and daughter would have these long fights about her smoking. She smokes more than anybody could say is healthy. And they argue about that. Neither one is taking the position it's a good and healthy thing. No one's arguing that. It's not about that. It's entirely about her feeling, when do I get to make my own decisions in my life? And it's entirely about his feeling of losing his little girl, and it's all about that. It's the last thing they say to each other. Yeah? Father and daughter, every time the wedding budget came up, it would just get so tense in the room. They made a mistake, incidentally, they both staked a position. Dad, I need $10,000. He says, I got $5. They both staked the position, which is foolish because now there's going to be a winner and a loser when you do that. But so every time it came up, they were just tense. Until finally one day the dad says, you know what, sweetheart? I don't know how I feel about giving you away. And she says, oh, Daddy. We finally mentioned the thing that the whole thing was about. We finally said it. And so we're trying to just convince us all, boy, there's a lot. Okay, so the dots I haven't seen, the unsaid thing, what your intentions actually are, the story that makes your feeling make sense, all of those feelings besides just anger or sadness. Next. What's at stake for you? Again, I might know part of that. I can maybe guess at part of that. I know one thing at stake for Joe is learning to be a preacher, but there's way more going on, so that's what I don't know. Where's the vulnerability? I don't know all of those. My hidden contributions. So I do not know the effect I've been having on you. I do not know the effect I've been having on you. I've been at this for 63 years. I've come to figure out that there's always a part I played, never fully innocent, always a part I played, but I don't happen to know the full scope of the impacts that I've had on you. I don't know how I've been affecting you. I don't know. Until I'm safe enough that you can tell me, I suppose. So a man is a high-powered advertising executive going off to a high-pressure meeting, gets to the meeting to sell the ad campaign, pulls out the stuff from his portfolio, and it's the wrong ad campaign. His assistant put the wrong thing in there, and he is just livid. And he's going to go, and he's just going to, we're going to have the blame conversation now, which is, this is what you were supposed to do. You did this, you shall be punished. It's going to be the blame conversation. And I love the example just because it just seems so obvious that it's her fault. And what turns out is that morning before he left, he had been just storming around the office, just storming around. And she was afraid of him and didn't know what to do. And there were several ad campaigns going on at once, and the last email he wrote was about a different one. But mostly it was storming around the office. And so all of a sudden, God willing, he sees the part he played. And so I think the word contribution is a really important word here, the word contribution. I might take a lot of convincing that this isn't a blame conversation. That looks backwards. That's not useful. The contribution conversation is, I'm willing to look at the part I played. I hope we both can. And that's going to be forward-looking. How do we have this not happen again? That's what that'll be. So hidden contributions, I don't know what I ignored. Hidden contribution, how hard I am to talk to about certain things. All these things I just will not see until I'm safe enough to hear it from you. So we got to push to the end. I don't know why this matters as much as it does. I shared something that you shared. It didn't seem that personal. I didn't know why it mattered as much as it did. That's on the list. Next. Your shoulds. I don't know where your shoulds come from. We should spend this much at a restaurant. We should never spend that much at a restaurant. I don't know where those come from for you. At my college, there's all kinds of policies. Of course there are about attendance and stuff. Attendance and all those things. But should you apply them? Should you not apply them? What if it's a great student who, has just been faithful in every way? Should you apply it or should you not apply it? And I'm agreeable. I'm training my colleagues, and so I say, you should. Cut them some slack. And you say, no, this is feet to the fire. This is how they learn. And so we're having a conflict. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where yours come from. Oh, the shoulds? Next. What kind of day you're having, what kind of life you're having. That's what I don't know. I had a colleague who was really going through a hard thing. And a lot of us on the staff spent some private time with him. And one of my other colleagues said something I've never forgotten. What he simply said is, you just never know what people are carrying around these hallways. You just never know what people are carrying around these hallways. And so we can never really fully see each other's struggles. But to see just some small part of it, doesn't that kind of awaken our compassion? And a whole better set of responses. So last story. It's a true story. Sounds kind of dramatic, but it's a true story. It's very illustrative. So a man takes his daughter, a 7-year-old daughter, to karate class, and he sits on the bench on the outside of the class and watches his little girl out there doing all this stuff. Well, on the floor with the 7-year-old girls is a man, and he is sweating, and he's taking it all with deadly seriousness and earnestness, doing the same moves. And the guy on the bench watching these kids, and this man, he wants to be a friend, he wants to be a good guy. He just can't do it because it's just so absurd. He can't have access to those good responses. Well, the rest of the story is the man on the floor had lost his little girl in a car accident, and they'd been taking karate classes together, and he was there to see it through. And hit the slide. I can think of a lot of stories like that, where the story turns on this moment of, I didn't know. And now all those responses of being humble and kind, all those are suddenly available to him just because of that moment of I didn't know. And as we stay humble, and as we stay resilient, seeking Christ in the morning, and all these things I can hope for. So the big idea, see if we can make it real. We're in the pool of meaning, wonderful. But we sense either silence or violence. We pull back from the issue to see to the person. We're going to make it safe. When we're pretty sure it's as safe as we can make it, we're on the same side again and holding hands, metaphorically, then we can re-engage, but now with way more curiosity, way more openness to what we may have to learn. And thank you for your patience. Boy, I always feel like that's a lot of talking. But I sure appreciate you. It's been a pleasure. 3 years straight. This might be it. We don't know. But God bless you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Paustian.